Hi, I'm glad you've decided to start your day stamping, because that's what we believe in here at Stampin' Up Paper. Today I've got a great card to show you, and it uses our wonderful stamp set, Upsy Daisy. And I'm going to start with Versamark, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of embossing. So we're going to turn our stamp over onto the table, ink that up really well. Make sure your Versamark pad is juicy if you haven't, if you've had it for a long time. Just double check, because you can get an ink refill for that. Now I'm using wood, so I'm just scooching down a bit to make sure that my stems are going to be at the bottom of the paper and not sort of flying mid-air with no ground. So you can't see too much of it now. I'm going to bring in my coffee filter and my white embossing powder. So if I'm using Versamark, my white embossing powder is going to stick just fine to that. And I'm going to, I call this nicking it. Just give it a little nick on the back to shake any off. I see that I missed part of that daisy there. Okay. And then because the coffee filter has no static cling, all of it goes back into the jar, and then you don't end up with that all over your house, all over your floor, and everything else. So I do love the coffee filters, I have to say. So here we have, I'm going to emboss. I'll do this real quick. And you can see that turn from a matte finish to a glossy white. You want to be about 1 inch away from your paper with your heat gun. See it turning there? And I just kind of wiggle it around until it starts to take somewhere, and then I just move along to the next patch. And one little bit, and a little bit there, and done. If you think you're done, always stop. You can always go back and heat it up a little bit more, but if you think you're done, do stop. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm using my Anywhere glue stick again, and I usually tell you to walk around the block and do all just the outside edges. But in this case, since I have heated the paper and there's a little bit of a, sort of a warping to it, I am going to fill in the whole thing. I never do that, but for this one, I'm going to do that. The cardstock I'm using is Pear Pizzazz. This is Concord, one of our new in colors, as is Pear Pizzazz. Now here's a tip for you. These are both 4 1/4 inches wide by 3 1/2 for this piece. What you want to do is make sure you're evening up your folded side, because if there's any shortcomings on either side of these cardstocks or the designer series paper, you can always bring it to your tabletop cutter to even it up. Now I'm using glue sticks again because I need to just shimmy that up a little bit to make those edges meet. So see, I've got it nice and flat here. If there's any shortcoming, I'm going to trim it on my paper trimmer. And it looks pretty good, okay? So we don't have to worry about that this time. This extra little piece of cardstock, also, this is Concord. This is from the Designer Series paper pack. Again, I'm using the Hostess promotion set. I love this. You get all this paper, and you can do oodles and oodles of stuff with it. So I just cut a tiny little strip, again, on my tabletop cutter of Concord cardstock to match my Designer Series paper, also in Concord. And I'm just adding this little strip in to just sort of land this image, because I found that without having that in there, it just sort of looked like it was still flying midair. And I wasn't liking that. So it just kind of lands the whole thing. Next thing, we're taking a piece of white cardstock. This is 1 inch by 4 1/4, so same width as you've been using. We're using our Concord Crush ink, and let's make this one a birthday celebrations. I'm going to stamp this a little bit to the right. And if at first you don't succeed, turn it over and try again. It's just a little bit wobbly for me there. There, that's better. And don't ever tell anybody if there's something on the other side of your cardstock. They will never, ever know. And that is why God gave us two sides for every piece of cardstock, right? How many times have we used that saying? Okay, so you can see here how I've got that little edge. It's just a little bit longer. So I'll show you at the end how I'm going to bring my paper cutter in. I'm just going to fix up that whole edge. So don't worry about little things like that. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly walk through the paper piercing. This is our matte pack. It's sold these 3 little things together, and your paper piercing tool is sold separately. You always want to make sure your really heavy one is down on your table, and in this case I already have one there, but you want to make sure you're protecting any surface. Then down goes your cushion part, and then I'm going to put my cardstock on and my template here. So I'm matching this black solid line with the edge of the cardstock, and that's going to make sure that my lines go on here straight. And what I'm going to do is pierce every other, I have to count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've punched 7 holes, and then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. So I'm going to turn this template so the black line matches up to the cardstock. You see how I'm lining that up there? So the black line just rides along the edge of the white cardstock, and that means that I'm going to get a nice straight line. And also, because I'm turning this template exactly the same way I did at the top part, it's going to be spaced evenly. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need one more. Okay, and that just gives you a nice little extra little detail. I'm just bringing my paper. This thing is a godsend. I love this cutter. So what I'm doing is I'm just evening up. You can see on here I've got these little edges that are just not quite right. But this cutter will shave off just that tiny little bit. So hold that plastic template down and just cut through the whole thing. And look at what it cut off, just this tiny little bit. And then just close your card up and see if you need to shorten up the back side too. And so I'm just going to shorten up a little bit on the back side. And this says a happy birthday card, so I can put a personal message in here, or I can use my It's Your Birthday stamp set and add something to it. But before we end, of course, we're going to put our bragging rights on the back. Created by, and there we are, birthday celebrations. Thanks for joining me again at www.stampsinkandpaper.com. Don't forget, start your day stamping. Bye. Thanks for coming.